What's up, Flip Factor family? This is Michael Green with the Flip Factor Podcast, the #1 podcast dedicated to teaching you how to find and win high-profit flips and manage your contractors so you can make more money and have the freedom to do the F what you want. Today, we're talking with my friend, really close friend, guy that I loved, helped me start my podcast, just an amazing figure in so many different ways, Chris Krimitsos. He's also the Chief Creative Officer at Podfest Media. So if you need to know anything about Podfest, you have to go to Podfest. It's pretty amazing. But more importantly, we brought him here today because he wrote a book that I read from start to finish, which I can't say about many books, right? I usually read about quarter and then ADD kicks in, but I read his from start to finish. It was just a really good book called Start Ugly, right? I was getting ready to say Start Why, right? Because
Start with why. We were just talking about Simon Sinek's book, but yeah, exactly. Start Ugly.
Start Ugly, man. I love this concept. So me and Chris are going to kind of dig into this and talk a little bit about why that's really relevant to house flippers and all that stuff, because it's just really important to know this. And I wish someone would have talked to me about starting ugly, because I spent 6 years thinking about flipping. And it wasn't until a friend pushed me into starting ugly that I was able to actually start my career as a house flipper. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that friend pushing me in. His book is so good about teaching you the why and understanding the philosophies of how much more beneficial it is to start ugly than it is to try to plan everything out. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, what inspired the book.
So I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I remember being an entrepreneur when I was 8 years old. I used to draw little diners on the back of my homework because I'm Greek. So everybody I knew owned a diner. So I was like, I'm going to own every diner in the world, and I would make little stick figures. But I used to sell candy out of school at 12, 13 years old. So I've always been like a hustler entrepreneurially, multiple business ventures. I'm one of those people, like entrepreneur is like a hot word now, but like I wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't an entrepreneur. It's baked into my DNA. And probably because my dad is an immigrant from Greece, his brothers and sisters and my uncles who had no education became self-made millionaires through the restaurant business. I had a really good prototype to see like, wow, look at the lifestyle that they have. I mean, they had a beautiful house. They worked hard, don't get me wrong, but I learned a lot from watching my uncles. And then what they did as they got older and got smarter, they started investing in real estate, and they did really well for themselves in commercial real estate and residential, and then also the stock market. So that was kind of a prototype and early model for me to see like, wow, if you really play your cards right, you could have a great family and a great financial life. And then literally I moved to Florida in my mid-20s. I became a real estate investor, and I would flip homes in Florida. For me, it just didn't make me happy flipping homes. I wanted to do some other things. So what I did was I transitioned into selling all my flips. Actually, I had a couple buy and holds. Let me clear that up. And the market was crashing at the time. I was very fortunate, and I sold before the market crashed. I had time and money, and I got involved into TV production. And then I built a community, my first community for business owners in Tampa. We had 300 active members. Pretty much most of my friends are in the real estate community. Like that's the community that embraced me. And my wife and I have a rental, duplex, and thank God for that income and the stability of it. But if you look at my life and all my starts and stops, the moments that went really well were the moments I was willing to start ugly. And then I don't know what happened, but in my 30s, I had, like you said, you mentioned that you spent time thinking. I would think about things a lot longer than I did when I was younger. And I had to really think like, why was I so successful early on in my life? And it was because I wasn't afraid of failure. I was willing to start ugly multiple times. And unfortunately, we're vilified for starting ugly. Like people think you get punished like, oh, look, you failed. I look at it as, no, you didn't fail. You tried something. It might not have worked. And now you need to learn and adjust. So I always tell people this book is not about starting ugly and staying ugly. It's about starting ugly and then perfectly executing as you move on. And it's been pretty amazing. You were one of the first people, because you and I were on a trip in Colorado to preview the book. You were my test subject, because I said, if Mike could make it through this book and enjoy it, because I don't like reading long books. I usually do audiobooks. I got something here, and I remember you read it that night, and you're like, hey, I like this book. And then we added a one-page, page 79, a how-to part just for you, a step-by-step guide that I think helps people that want to know, okay, how do I start ugly? It's been an amazing ride, in entrepreneurship and now in authorship. So I'm in the business of selling books now.
Yeah. And really, honestly, one of the things you said to me I thought was really impactful is you're like, Mike, I want this book to change people's lives. And once I read it, I realized it was totally going to do that. Obviously, he was talking about, I gave some advice. I'm very nerdy and I like, systems. And I was like, hey, throw some nerdiness in it. But like, it's very little nerdiness where it's a lot of like just inspiration to kind of jump through that hoop, right, and get going. And that's the thing I think most of us struggle with is like just doing. But I loved, and I always want to kind of make sure I put some context behind this. Chris isn't talking about going out and risking your whole life savings without any kind of research, but like research just enough in order to take calculated action. but take action, right? Don't get caught up in that paralysis by analysis thing that so many of us get caught up in. Chris, your book, talk to us a little bit about what it means to start ugly and how does that apply to house flipping? Like, how would a house flipper really use that?
No, you were really instrumental in at least having a how-to guide. So I'm going to just list off the 7 points that we have that we created. My wife too is very analytical and organizational. And I think that's really important. It's just, you have to balance all that out, right? Which we all do. So step 1 is identifying an opportunity, a new way of doing things. So in this case, in real estate, could be identifying, okay, I want to do flips, or I want to do buy and holds. What is it that you want to do, right? Step 2 is research what you're getting into and set a time limit for that research. You just said that. Don't allow yourself to get bogged down trying to prepare for every eventuality. Now, in the real estate niche, I remember when I was flipping homes, you would see the same person studying for like 10 years. And you'd ask other people like, yeah, they're really active. They've been here a long time. How many flips have they done? They're like, they're still gearing up for their first one.
Or like 2, right? Yeah, they've done like 2. They're just
maybe 2 over the 10 years, and they're still studying for the third one. But it's like, holy crap, how much time did they waste? Like sometimes you just, So anyways, you want to just.
That was me.
So step 3 is create a minimal viable thing, whatever that is. So in this case, right, we're Start Ugly. There's people that are you want a creative project, a hobby. It really doesn't matter. In this case, we're talking about real estate, but starting ugly, it doesn't matter what it is, right? But let's just talk about in real estate. So create a minimal viable, whatever your minimal viable goal is. So for some people, let's say they're very risk averse. Maybe you partner up with someone to do your first deal, or you find a coach to help you through your first deal, whatever that is. Step 4, and it says, don't get stuck in perfection. That's always people's downfall. Step 4 is commit to a launch date to make it real, make it public by telling people. So if I'm in the game of real estate, hey guys, on this day, I'm going to do my first deal. Whether you do it or not, when you announce it, you will move towards doing it because you just put your ass on the line and you're telling people this is what you're going to do. Step 5 is your Start Ugly and launch. That's you actually did it. Congratulations. Now, step 6 is set check-in dates to assess. This is probably the most important part of this, Mike. Part A is if you determine you don't like what you started, stop. Congrats. You don't have to think about it anymore. So for instance, let's say you're thinking about doing real estate. You did it. You didn't enjoy it. Congratulations. Move on to something else. All right. However, if you loved what you were doing, you're like, wow, this was amazing. Decide what your endeavor will become. Is your real estate going to be a new business, a new division? Is it going to be a side hustle? Is it going to be a hobby that you really enjoy? And set milestones accordingly. And then step 7, create systems. This is your specialty. And work towards perfect execution. Now you got something. But what I found, Mike, is I gave this talk a while back, and there was a really well-known chiropractor in his community. He was well-known. He had flown out to this retreat we were doing in the Keys. And I said step 6, where I said, hey, determine if you don't like what you started, stop. And he came up to me because I saw him shake his head. I said, you're shaking your head at step 6. What happened? He goes, I do really well as a chiropractor, and I started this new line of CBD products. He goes, and I'm making money, but I don't enjoy it. And he goes, you just gave me permission to stop. And you realize in entrepreneurship, just because you started something, people feel guilty for stopping because they feel like failures. I look at it as like, I know you're like this. It's like, no, you learned something. Don't guilt yourself over. Don't create a meaning that you're a failure. If you didn't like it, move on to the next thing. Life's too short.
It's so hard to do that, Chris, when you think about that concept, right? That your ability to be able to say, you know what, I don't like this particular piece of flipping. There's many things we can do within real estate investing, and it doesn't have to be flipping a home. It can be wholesaling. There's so many things you might like or might not like.
Some people like bird dogging. There's nothing wrong with that. Bird dog, find someone that likes doing the other part of it. I think it's essential to figure out what makes you tick. And it's okay to say, okay, I don't like that part. Let me try something else. The whole purpose of Start Ugly is to strip away. I want people, when they live their life, to have said I started ugly instead of what if. And I think I'd rather replace the what if with saying, yeah, you know what? I started ugly a whole bunch of times and this is what I learned. And then eventually I got it right. And this is what I was able to build with that.
So essentially it's like start ugly, right? You don't have to be perfect. It's better to start ugly than it is not to start at all, which I think represents most people. They haven't even started at all. So they haven't even had an opportunity to see what they love, what they like, or how to improve it, or, the possibility. And we always talk about this, like people at the end of their lives, one of their biggest regrets are the things they didn't do.
Listen, man, I've wasted some time now, and I'm looking back on my life, and I'm like, man, I tell people, they look at me because I'm in my early 40s, and they're like, man, you seem like you're always in a rush. I'm like, yeah, I enjoy the moment. Don't get me wrong, but I move at a faster pace than most, and it's because I just want to know that I got the most out of my time here, and I just want to have fun. I want to enjoy myself, and I don't mind starting ugly with my friends and learning, and then just enjoying the journey at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. That's powerful stuff. The book's great. I mean, I'm loving it for that reason. When it started telling the story of two different people and why, it really reminded me of, I think, probably one of the greatest books ever written in real estate, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It was like this story of one person versus the other. And you start to really be able to kind of break down the difference between people who just do versus people who think about doing. And then finding that perfect balance between the two, which I always love, because I always find there's people that do, and I call them people who jump in the pool head first and with no water in it and then bust their head. And then there's the people like me who dip their toe in. And it's like, man, that's kind of cold. I sit there, my toe dipped in for like 20 minutes and I'm like, it's really cold. I don't think I want to get in. This is too cold. So I don't want to be that person either. We want to be right in the middle, right? We want to strategically be a little of both.
You and I have similar philosophies, but you know this, everybody has a different philosophy to how they approach life. You just mentioned it with the analogy of the water. The reason why I created this book is starting ugly is a fundamental truth. There is no one that starts something that their first start is not ugly compared to their 100th or their 1000th. I just look at this as a fundamental truth for the person that likes to dip their toe in the water. Basically, you want to strip the excuses away so you get started sooner. That's all this book is about. How you start, I don't really care as long as you start, if that makes sense. So for some people, their risk tolerance is higher than others. Okay. I'm more of on the risk taker side. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I just know that about myself. I know that I actually have to protect my family to put money away because I am the kind of guy that'll put all the chips on the table and say, let's see what happens. Right. So I know that about myself. So there's something to be said about the people that are more risk averse. All I'm telling everybody on either scenario is we could start quicker and uglier faster and learn much, much more than waiting to decide. For instance, this past week, I was interviewing a couple firms to hire a virtual assistant, okay? I started thinking about it, and I spent a week thinking about it. Then I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Let me sign the contract. If it doesn't work out, I'll go with the other firm.
Yeah, simple
right
enough,
there,
right?
I saved time, right?
Yeah.
If I thought about it for 6 months, it doesn't accomplish anything. Like thinking about it, I just wasted 6 months is what it accomplishes. So I'd rather just start ugly. If I made the wrong decision, whatever, it cost me a couple dollars, I'll go with the other person after.
I don't think I even ever told you this, but one of the things we teach, like in our coaching and part of working with contractors, is we teach a way for you to test them out and have minimum consequence, because we know a lot of them aren't going to work out. And the thing that always will kill you with working with contractors is taking way too long to hire them, and then process of hiring one individual being so big that you don't want to do it again. So you just end up staying with this one contractor who's a C or a D and not really a great contractor, but he's barely getting by, and you don't want to go through the big process again. It's all about making it really simple and quick. Like you said, just make a quick decision, hire your VA. If it doesn't work out, you jump to the next one. Is it, you're not afraid of that process.
There's a story that I don't know if I ever told you a story. This is a really good story. There's a book, I forgot what it was called. I believe it was called The Banana Wars, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's about an immigrant, for Russian immigrant that came to this country at the turn of the last century. His name was Samuel Zamuri, and he wound up cornering the banana trade, and his competitors were the United Fruit Company. The term Banana Republic literally comes from two banana companies fighting it out for property in Central America. And the two of them came to buying all the property except for one tract of land, which was like 5,000 acres. I don't remember if it was the border of Honduras or Guatemala, but it was one of those countries. And there was one tract of land that if whoever owned it would control the banana trade, because there was a river that flowed through that tract of land, and you needed the river to supply water to like hundreds of thousands of acres of banana. The United Fruit Company was in Boston. Literally the founding fathers, like grandsons, were like on the board. And this immigrant, Samuel Zamuri, is competing with them. And he's like a fraction of their size, but he's more efficient, makes more money. It turns out that two people claim that they own the deed to this 5,000 acre plot of land that would literally determine who would own the region. Okay. The boardroom up in Boston, they're having board meetings trying to figure out. Samuel Zamuri goes down to Central America and he buys it twice from both people, and he owns that piece of land. So he didn't even think about it. He's like, okay, I'll just buy it twice because it's worth so much more. I don't really care. So he bought it twice, wound up taking the land, and then like he diverted like the waterway from the other company. Like it's really shady stuff for back then. But he wound up owning the whole trade. That this was during I think it was FDR had just gotten office. They had to call him into the president's office while they're preparing for World War II to be like, what the hell are you doing in Central America? We can't have these banana wars happening, because they started like bringing in their own generals and armies to fight each other. And that's how we get the term banana wars. It was literally from two banana companies going at it, because in the early 1900s, bananas were the candy of the day. So everybody ate bananas. So it was a huge, multi-million-dollar trade.
That's such a cool story too. You're right. I mean, he basically took the problem and just created a solution very quickly and just did it. While everybody else was thinking about it, right? I mean, what a cool story. And he got rewarded for that.
He started ugly, man. Let everybody else think about it. He's like, I just buy it twice. It's worth 100 times more than what either one of these people are asking for. So what do I care who owns the deed? Once I buy it twice, I own the deed.
Plus, most of what we're going to learn, like when we talk about starting ugly, most of what we're going to learn relating this to house flippers is actually doing and being in the field and just being out there and then just taking notes, right? Like a scientist, right? Scientists, they test things and then they try it and then they test and see and then they revise it. Now, that's what we got to do, right? We got to go do, test, revise, and just keep that process.
But Mike, that's every business on the planet. There's no business where it's not repetition and practice. It's all the same thing. The key though is to strip away. So our brain creates excuses. So for people that are achiever oriented, the excuses are, it's not perfect. Okay. The people that are like, I've never done this before, the other excuse is fear. But the truth is, it's all based in fear, right? So even the perfectionist who thinks like, oh, I just don't want to do it till it's perfect. It's actually fear of failure that's keeping them from creating it. I had to really think about like all the reasons I didn't start something. It all comes down to fear. We're afraid. Even though those of us that are like high achiever types are like, oh, well, I'm not afraid. I just need it to be really good and perfect. That's still fear. You know,
it's like code for I'm afraid, right? I mean, essentially, right?
It's code for I'm afraid. You're just giving yourself a BS excuse to why you're afraid. It sounds really good, but it's all the same crap. And honestly, you just need to be committed that once you start something, if you enjoy it, to get better at it. If you could do that, you know, I do events. There's no more brutal business to be in than promotions. Like it is the most brutal, hardest game ever, like that I've ever been part of, because you get screwed by the hotel rooms. Sometimes people don't want to buy tickets because you're testing something new. But I've done 2,000 events. I've never not learned something from an event and from a crowd over those 2,000 events. I've lost millions of dollars collectively, but I've also made millions of dollars collectively. But in aggregate, all of that has prepared me for what I'm doing now. Like the events I do now are huge events in convention centers. But it all started from the meetup level at restaurants. It started at business club, hotels. My first ever event, it's in this book, Mike. My first ever event was at an American Legion. My TV shows, I had one about real estate. So I invited all these my real estate friends to join this business group. And the Legionnaires smoked cigars the night before and the AC busted. And it was like June in Florida. You couldn't ask for and I asked everybody to dress up. You couldn't ask for a worse situation. And then one guy goes to me, why'd you choose the American Legion? I'm like, I never done an event, and Mr. Diaz watches the TV show. He gave it to me for $300, so I figured this was a great place to have it. Obviously, I learned the next event was at a hotel, but like in the moment, I knew nothing about events, but they still saw through it. I had 20 people join. That Start Ugly gave me my start, and I'm grateful. But I learned every time I did an event over time how to improve.
It's really something I want to unpack with you, and then we'll finish up. But I feel like it's such a big concept when you talk about, you know, learning and improving. And you've been in events for a very long time. I went to your last Podfest, and one of the things I mentioned to Chris, and I didn't say this lightly or to kiss butt or anything, best well-ran event I've ever been part of. I mean, Chris had everything thought out to the evenings after the event, fun things for us to do, you know, ways to connect the community. So we were doing stuff and meeting and just a lot of really cool stuff. Had a massage therapist for the VIP. I didn't get one, by the way, but like totally just didn't sign up for it, but it was like free and it was just so cool, man. Great job. So you got there though. And in my belief of why you've become this good at doing this one thing is like you just said, you didn't get it right at the VFW, but then you got it better the next time. Here you are many years later, still talking about how to get it better. Every time I speak with you or see you run an event, like your mind is completely running around. Not that, oh, I'm the best at running events. It's always like, what do I need to do to make this experience amazing for everyone who's coming? So you're coming from that place of like being humble, even though you really are a superstar at it. I think sometimes we have to remove that, like that ego, and get into being humble and service. That applies to house flipping, applies to every business, anything you do. Like every day, I'm still 10 years in the game, over 1,100 flips. And we've really spent a decent portion of every day thinking about how to be better at this, how to service our clients who buy the properties, just everything, how to make our contractors' experience with us better. This really is very much related. It's such a great concept you just talked about, like improving, even once you feel like you're there.
Yeah. So the key, I've had to learn this because I used to be so critical. I couldn't enjoy the wins. The key is to enjoy the moment while you're there, but understand that your core people will give you some feedback that you could improve on for next year. And I'm always looking at the feedback, and you have two kinds of feedback. And this is really important for anyone listening to this. You have feedback where people are upset with their life and they're going to lash out at you. You have to build a filter to discount those people because they're just angry at the world. Then you have feedback like Michael, you might say to me, hey, it was really great, but when it was in the VIP, yeah, we just ran out of food. Not a big deal. To me, that's like, okay, big deal. I ran out of food. At what time did we run? Hey, Mike, what time did we run out of food? You'll tell me, okay, that's important feedback to know. Or our exhibitor space is so busy. Our exhibitors get so slammed that we realized that we were making them so busy they didn't have time to eat. So then the next year I assigned a liaison. His job was literally to feed the exhibitors because they would forget to eat because they didn't have time. So you always want to like learn, like, how can I make their experience better? Because they're helping fund this whole event. So you always want to look at everything you do and appreciate the wins, but also at the same time, look, how could you do it better to make it better on your consumer, yourself, build your systems out. And what's interesting is I keep busy, but I always have time for people, probably because I'm really good at delegating. So over time, you build a team, and then your team trusts you, you trust your team, and then you delegate. And a piece of advice I'd give anybody that's team building, and this is just my own piece of advice, you can take it how you like it. Loyalty is a very big factor in your teammates. Definitely you want them to personally execute perfectly, but you also need to find their strengths and their weaknesses. And you could build a really great team with people that might be subpar in some areas, but great in other areas if you know how to utilize their talents and their strengths. But the key is they have to have integrity and loyalty. So like, I know that my team members will transact with my attendees in a way that is 100% amazing. And sometimes some people are like, hey, why is that guy part of your team? He's kind of a character. I'm like, yeah, he's a character, but at the end of the day, he cares. He cares for the community. He cares for what what we're doing. And that's what I care about. And, and that's how you want to really build around that. You could always build an amazing team that way, and you'll see everybody move up, the food chain together.
Yeah, I feel like some of the best advice I've ever got on having your people be loyal to you is you have to start with being loyal to them first, and not misplaced loyalty, loyal to the right people, right? Not to the people who are what we'll call like C or D players or not really connected to the overall vision. So, but the people who are, which we often find, like we have to be loyal to them and show them loyalty in order to get it in return. Like anything we want in life, right? We have to give it first before we can get it.
Well, and you could take over if you look at like even presidential campaigns. What people don't realize, because I've helped in all kinds of things behind the scenes, usually there's like 3 or 4 people running an entire campaign. And like people really don't understand, like, yeah, there's grassroots and all kinds of people, but there's never more than 3 or 4 people. And you're talking about they barnstorm an entire country. So like if you have 3 or 4 key people in your business, you could literally, build it to, especially nowadays where you could scale out with virtual professionals, you could scale out your business tremendously, like overnight. But the key is to start ugly, perfectly execute, get your first deal under you, then get your second deal, keep starting ugly till you're happy with where you're at, and then you just keep executing perfectly. And then don't get complacent, because you know this, you've done over 1,000 flips. Where you started 10 or 15 years ago, whenever you started, to where you are now, the industry has also evolved. So you have had to start ugly in your approach many times, in your marketing approach. That's part of what this book is about too. I'm part of a big business group where the people are financially very successful, okay? And I'll hear limiting beliefs out of their mouth, and I'm like, holy crap, this is not just for someone starting a flip. This is for people that are doing 10 million a year in business. They've already capped their potential because they're looking back at the past, not looking at the fact that if they want to grow, they need to transition their approach to what's going on in today's marketplace. And you and I have had many conversations about how you've had to transition your marketing. Those are all start ugly moments for you. And that's why you're still on top of your game.
Well, it's funny you say that too. Like people that make 10 million a year, their limiting belief becomes like, I can't make 50 million a year, right? So even as we get to say we're doing 20 houses a year successfully, then we always hold limiting beliefs that say, okay, that's our ceiling. What's the next level of this? So that's why the constant improvement is how you go to 30 houses, 40 houses, or really, I always like to talk about, increasing profits versus increasing volume anyhow, but just making more money, working less hours is always the secret to what we're trying to focus on.
Well, and Mike, this better than anyone, those are different levels financial, but it could also be something as simple as like, okay, I want to make $250,000 a year and I want time with my family. I want more time, which, I'm more of a lifestyle person. I know you are too, in that, okay, well, where do I need to hit that? And then once I hit it, what do I do with that extra time? So then it could be, you could grow via your hobbies. Like you and I have a lot of different hobbies. Like I want to grow through my hobbies. So before I'm dead and buried, there's things I want to do hobby wise through different things that I'm into. I'm big into the outdoors. I want to go exploring in different things. I might want to do like a hobby YouTube video. Well, I'll take some of my profits to fund a camera crew to come out with me to do my hobbies. It's just, you want to be cognizant of that growth. The reason why the person at the $10 million level the group I'm part of, it's about growth. We're looking to grow. And that person was capped in their growth by the words they were saying. And it caught me off guard because I'm like, wow, he's in this organization to grow and he's telling all these limiting beliefs. And the reason is we get lazy. The more successful you get lazy and you forget, like, you got to still grind. Everybody watches Gary Vee. All he talks about is the grind. If you're willing to keep grinding, your business will keep growing, but it depends where you're at and what you want.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that. Really, what you're saying is you just need to be part of a group that's going to help push you through your limiting beliefs when they come up and identify them and move to the different. I've always found that since I decided to be part of a group and do some coaching, give back, I've been doing better than ever because I'm not on a desert island by myself anymore. right? It's always better together than it is alone.
Yeah, and you want to ask superior questions. All my friends, my friends love me, so I don't have anything, but they were like, some of them are like, hey, you could sell 1 million copies. I know you were like that, but others are like, hey, man, because they knew too much. The other one's like, be realistic. Most people only sell 100 copies at best. You're lucky if you could sell 200 copies. Dude, in the first 72 hours of this thing on Amazon, I blew through all the guesstimates I didn't know that you could outsell an on-demand printer. The copies were on hold for like a week later. We'll have copies available. They're available now. Don't get me wrong, but
well, you sold out in 3 days, right? I mean, I
in
know I
3
got
days,
some
I
of the
sold
last
out whatever
copies.
the first printing, I guess, whatever they create and stock in the back. You could still buy them. It just takes more. Nowadays, this is something for anyone listening. We live in such an instant world. If someone can't get their book within 24 hours, it's considered sold out. But you could still buy the book and wait 3 to 4 days to get it. That's considered. We live in such an on-demand world. It's so funny. Back in the day, sold out meant like, I got to wait another month for the next printing. Now it just means, sorry, we can't have it to you at your house today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're going to have to wait 4 days when it catches up. So basically,
like, this is hard for people, right? 4
it's
days
hard.
is a
Yeah,
lifetime.
people can't wait. So it's funny how times. So that's part of this book. Times have changed where people want things right away. I just want to be very clear. Anyone listening to this, I don't want them getting caught off guard. This book is a fictional tale about a guy in the early 1900s who basically sets out to be a self-made man. His parents pass away and he's left to take care of his siblings. His name is Gregory Sharp, and he wants to revolutionize the lumber mill industry, and he does. And then in the process, there are some innovations that happen that he kind of has under his nose but doesn't pay attention to. And then I'll let other people read the book. If you go to juststartugly.com, it'll direct you to the Amazon page. It's a really great story. And before and after the story, I put some really cool case studies and some examples. And then we have that 7-step process I created on page 79. But it's all about motivating someone that reads this book to get started immediately on something that they've been holding off.
Yeah. How many things in life do we have? Everyone does. Last question. We'll finish up. Like, what's the one tip you would have for a house flipper who either wants to get started or just like you said, wants to take it to that next level and, they want to kind of jump into something they've been fearful of doing?
I was a house flipper. So I'm going to talk you're talking to someone that's been in the real estate industry. Start ugly by way of 1 or 2 things. Know who you are. So if you're truly risk averse and you're scared, partner up with a really great coach, right, Mike? I know you offer, and I'm not saying this because you're my friend, but like you're one of the most seasoned. I've been doing this for years, and I know a lot of people. You're one of the most seasoned house flippers I've ever met in my life. Probably top 2 or 3. There's one other one here in Tampa that's done over 1,000 deals. I don't know too many people. Find a mentor or coach if you know that you're truly risk averse. You're better off investing in their programs, helping you walk through the deal. But set a goal with that coach to get the deal done, okay? If for whatever reason you're in analysis paralysis, then you need to start setting start ugly goals. And it could be as simple as like, I will go knock on 10 doors, or I will do whatever that coach tells them, you'll do it. If you're not willing to do it, know that your why is not big enough for you to do it. And you need to do some internal work to understand, like, what do you really want out of life? Because there's something holding you back. But in the most basic form, start ugly. Don't be afraid of fear. Make fear your bitch. Then celebrate with Michael your Start Ugly wins. I'm waiting for my first critical review on Amazon for Start Ugly, and I'm going to throw a party because that means I made it, that I am so valuable that someone's willing to take the time out and bash my book. They're actually, that's phenomenal. My one buddy, Gabe, he has a golf channel called Let's Play Through for YouTube. Someone watched all 20 minutes and wrote a review like, I can't believe I had to go through 20 minutes to watch him play golf or something. And then his answer was like, I'm so glad you spent 20 minutes watching me play golf or whatever. I'm truly honored. Like, that's the way you got to treat your critiques. Like, don't take them to heart. Celebrate them. Like, celebrate your failures. That means you're doing something right. It means you're living life.
As soon as you start doing it right, you get on the troll radar. So they'll be out there.
Trolls are part of life, man. They've always been part of life. In the past, they used to be like your friends and family. Now they're just online, the random person. So appreciate the troll. Know that they're commenting that you're living life to its fullest. I'd rather you live life outside of your head than inside of your head. And I might even make that my tagline, like, start ugly and live life outside your head instead of inside your head. And strip away all the what ifs.
Dude, really good stuff. Chris, amazing topic. I'm sure the family out there, Flip Factor family, is going to get tons of value from everything you've taught. I highly recommend you get the book. It's $20. Like, hey, show them the book. It's pretty cool too. Easy read.
It's a collectible to put on your bookshelf.
Absolutely. You know, it's he talked about this book being around for a really long time. It's selling like crazy, really great results. Everyone's crazy happy with it. It's something I read and I got a tremendous amount of value. And I can't say that about every book, but this one is probably in the top 5 that I'd read. This is a book that when I bought this, there's only been 2 other books in my life that I've bought more than one. I bought 25 copies of this book. That's how much I liked it. I've only done that with 2 other books in my life, and that was The One Thing, Gary Keller, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. So these are books that I think everyone should read. I think Start Ugly is in with that company. And I know this sounds crazy because Chris is like, oh, you know, pump me up too much. But really, honestly, it's that kind of book. For me, it was. And I know it will be for a lot of people. So I highly recommend that you get out and check it out. Chris, what's the best way to get to if they want to get the book and just the fastest way?
Just go to juststartugly.com. And then if you want to reach out to me, my page is chriskrimitsos.com. If you misspell my name, it'll come up on Google, but you can find me on Facebook. This book, actually, when you buy the book at the end, it says, hey, tag me and DM me and hashtag Start Ugly and announce what you're going to be doing after you read the book. So I'm excited. Mike, thank you for your support. You're one of the first early people to review the book and you've supported us, but this is made for us to not only digest, but then pay it forward to a friend that's stuck. And you don't necessarily have to tell them anything because it's a fictional tale. And it's a 38-minute read. We've clocked it. It goes anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes. They'll understand what it's about once they read it, and it might move them off of like analysis paralysis. That's why we created it.
Well, I just figured out my reading skill based on that because it took me an hour and a half. But if I read better, I could tell that I probably could have done it faster. But yeah, so it's a quick read. It's easy, but it's impactful. It was really very impactful for me. Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing with the listeners. I knew this would be great value for everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to do it. You know, obviously, it's always amazing having you on. And, you know, I hope to have you back in the future. So we talked about how to get a hold of you. People can also just go to Amazon, right, and check it out.
Yeah, the best thing is go on Amazon, Start Ugly, and then leave us a review. Mike, when you get a chance, you know, reread the book or whatever, please leave us a review. Those I appreciate because it helps us reach a global audience. We've already gotten 25 reviews in 1 week, which is a lot. And people are now just leaving reviews almost daily. So anything you could leave us. Obviously, if you don't like the book, you could tell me directly. But if you do leave the review, we will celebrate it.
Hey, I always tell them, like, look, if you love the book, leave a review. If you hate it, keep your opinion to yourself.
Email me directly, all right?
Yes, please keep your thoughts to yourself if you hate it. But most people should like it. I'm sure, like, you know, like
no, I mean, listen, I care for them to like it, obviously. If you get anything out of this conversation, whether you buy my book or not, if there's something you're delaying to do within your flipping business, identify that one thing, make it a Start Ugly item, and set a date to get started and move through the action and understand that the action won't feel good. It'll feel uncomfortable because it's a new behavior. And the reason why we say Start Ugly, because it feels ugly, but as you get better, it'll feel much more nuanced. It'll feel, you'll be more confident. It'll be like building a new muscle, but it'll free you up and your financial freedom. And I'm really big on that because my wife and I will always brag. Thank God we're entrepreneurs. We get to go on 3-week vacations to Arizona to go visit her parents. We get to go, you know, to exotic locations throughout the year. It's because we don't have to ask for a permission slip to take off. It's a luxury as entrepreneurs we have. Don't get me wrong. We have to work really hard for that luxury, but it's something we wouldn't trade with the world. You know, we get to see our 2 girls grow up. So Start Ugly and make whatever it is you're pursuing happen and get started today.
Dude, great advice. Thank you for being on. And thank you, Flip Factor family, for listening and joining us. I know your time's super valuable. There's a lot of options out there. A podcast. Highly appreciate it. I'm Michael Green. My work's done. Yours has just begun. Get out there and win some high profit flips and check out Start Ugly, a great book. It's going to change your life. Everyone have a great day. Thank you, Chris.